They arrive on board the Enterprise. While Kirk is taken to sickbay, Spock arrives on the bridge, greeted by Captain Pike. "Ladies and gentlemen, the maiden voyage of our newest flagship deserves more pomp and circumstance than we can afford today. Her christening will just have to be our reward for a safe return. Yes, our maiden voyage of the new USS Enterprise. Also, screw you, Robert April." The rest of the fleet warps out, but the Enterprise stalls because their new helmsman, Sulu, forgot to disengage something. Also, wow, Starfleet has a lot of that particular ship class sitting in orbit. After they get underway, Chekhov, who also shouldn't be here this early on, but we'll get to that later, makes a ship-wide broadcast to explain what's going on. The lightning storm in space thing was detected in the neutral zone, and somehow that affected Vulcan and started causing seismic upheaval. Also, Vulcan is apparently like 5 minutes away from Earth and less time away from the neutral zone, since Chekhov says they'll be arriving in 3 minutes. Issue 3 ends with Kirk saying that they have to stop the ship since he recognizes the lightning storm term. Issue 4 begins with them on the bridge and Kirk connecting the dots for everyone. The lightning storm was made by a Romulan ship, the same one that destroyed the Kelvin, and that last night, the Klingon Armada was destroyed by a massive Romulan ship in the transmission Uhura intercepted. We'll forgive the fact that she never mentioned that it was a Romulan ship, nor the fact that apparently Starfleet Academy's science lab can just pick up transmissions from that far away, nor that Starfleet is apparently unconcerned about 47 frickin' ships from a hostile power getting destroyed mysteriously. In any event, the warning amounts to, well, not much other than them arriving with their shields up, which does probably save their lives, but more so that after the initial volley from Nero's ship, Nero sees that it's the Enterprise and knows that Spock is on board. Because I guess random space miners know Spock's biography and what ship he served on in an enemy's fleet. Yes, I know, explained in Star Trek Countdown, but we're only talking about the movie here, and like I said, only about 6,000 people at most made those orders for this book, while a hell of a lot more people watched the damn movie without it, and they knew more people would watch the movie than read anything else, and decided to neglect information. Still, I'm sure Eric Bana's performance truly reflects the nuance of Nero's character as he hails the Enterprise.
"Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
I'm here for vengeance for my wife and world, golly gee boy howdy. How's your day going?" Nero explains how he doesn't represent the Romulan Empire and orders Captain Pike to come to his ship. Once the transmission ends, everyone else makes it clear that going over there is a bad idea, but Pike needs to buy some time for them. While he's going over there, Kirk, Sulu, and Engineer Deadmeat are going to head down to the machine that's currently lowered into Vulcan's atmosphere. Said device scrambling their communications and transporter capabilities. With transporters online again, they'll be able to beam him off the enemy ship, now identified as the Narada. In the meantime, Spock is in command, and Pike promotes Kirk to first officer. Now, you might think that this doesn't make any sense, and that's because it doesn't. Anyway, the space jump is made, and Engineer Deadmeat decides to be a dumbass, not releasing his chute at the right time because he's having fun, and soon becomes a deadass as his body collides with the device. Fight scene ensues. Sulu gets to use a cool folding sword to kill a couple Romulans. Why are there a few Romulans just standing on top of this thing anyway? And they use some disruptors to blast the device, allowing the two to get beamed back. Unfortunately, the device was a laser drill, and they didn't stop it in time. The drill reached the core of the planet. Nero launches something called red matter down into the hole it creates. Whatever this stuff is, it creates a black hole at the center of the planet. It has only minutes until the entire world is consumed by it. And it was essential that something that creates a frickin' black hole be put at the center of the planet, as opposed to just dropping it on the surface, because shut up. Lots of stuff happens quickly. Chekhov manages to beam Kirk and Sulu back before they fall to the planet. Spock transports down to get the Vulcan High Command out of their transporter-proof building, his mother unfortunately not making it. And issue 4 ending with the planet going down the proverbial drain. No joke, in the theater, given how the plot involved time travel, I figured, well, the whole thing would get undone. While I'm not fond of making a separate timeline and all, well, credit where it's due, they stuck to their guns and didn't go the expected route. As issue 5 begins, Nero and the Narada apparently made their escape amidst all the chaos, and Spock makes a log entry. While the essence of our culture has been saved in the elders who now reside upon this ship, I estimate no more than 10,000 have survived. I am now a member of an endangered species. It's a real pity that Nero somehow erased all other Vulcan ships, colonies, embassies, and other amounts of people off planet. That's a bummer. And no, I don't buy that the 10,000 accounts for all those. Vulcans have been a spacefaring race for a long time before this. I've got to imagine that there are millions out there. Uhura tries to comfort Spock in the wake of all this, but he just wants to focus on his duties. On board the Narada, Nero reveals that he wanted Pike because he wants the subspace frequencies of Starfleet's border protection grids, specifically those surrounding Earth. Aside from the fact that they'd probably change that sort of thing for security purposes as soon as he was captured, what the hell does it matter? The Narada keeps shrugging off huge fleets of ships. What's a planetary defense grid gonna do? Hell, wouldn't Vulcan have had one of those too? And again, not even a mosquito bite's worth of damage. Pike is of course not talking, pissed because of what happened to Vulcan and the genocide Nero committed. I prevented genocide! In my time, where I come from, this is a simple mining vessel. I was off planet, doing my job while your Federation did nothing, and allowed my people to burn while their planet broke in half. And oh boy, does this dialogue make no friggin' sense, made even worse when you did read that countdown prologue. Actually, by destroying Vulcan, he in fact doomed many more people to die. Well, assuming time travel worked like it normally does in Star Trek, but this movie operates on the parallel universe theory of time travel, so there you go. Anyway, Pike says he's out of his mind because Romulus is fine and the incident he described never happened. It has happened! I watched it happen! I saw it happen! Don't tell me it didn't happen! I didn't exaggerate that voice, by the way. This is the performance Eric Bana decided to give.
It has happened! I watched it happen! I saw it happen! Don't tell me it didn't happen!
It was a very inspired choice for him to play Nero as a petulant child. Like, he only implies he's from the future, so why doesn't he just outright say, I come from the future? But whatever, guess what? His wife isn't actually mentioned in this comic. We see her in a flashback later, but that's it. Good job there, it was like his primary motivation. Now he's just upset about Romulus being destroyed, and he's decided that he wants to create a Romulus free from the Federation altogether, and plans to use alien slugs to get the information he wants. You know, just like Khan did. In fact, just a brief aside here to compare, Khan is marooned for 15 years, loses his wife, and this is his reaction.
I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up.
Nero loses his wife and is marooned for 25 years, and his reaction is...
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
Pure poetry. Anyway, on the Enterprise, they discuss the situation. Nero is headed for Earth. McCoy wonders how the hell the Romulans have the technology to destroy a planet like that, with a black hole and all. Which is actually kind of funny, because in the 24th century, Romulan warbirds are powered by an artificial quantum singularity like a black hole. I don't know, maybe in this time period they used something different, but if it's the same, that's just kind of amusing. Anyway, Spock thinks that the black hole generating device pretty much answers the question for them. Using a black hole like that, they may be able to create a hole in the space-time continuum and travel through time. Time travel? Are you out of your Vulcan mind? It's probably just some scientist who whipped up something advanced like that. $10 says I'm right. You're on! The real purpose of this scene is to establish that they're living in an alternate universe to reassure long-term Star Trek fans that the reboot doesn't invalidate the old timeline. Kirk wants them to pursue Nero before he reaches Earth, but of course Spock says they're outmatched and outgunned, and they need to rendezvous with the rest of the fleet. Kirk gets pissed off and Spock finally orders security to escort him off the bridge, but he's so belligerent that Spock neck pinches him and orders him off the ship. Which seems like an odd and really unnecessary detour when you could just shove him in the brig or something, but then we wouldn't get to where we need to in the plot. Kirk gets dropped off on the planet Delta Vega and immediately runs into two different monsters, being chased into a cave inhabited by Leonard Nimoy! Kirk doesn't recognize him as Spock, of course, who uses a mind meld to explain the details of what went down. 129 years in the future, a star will explode and threaten to destroy the galaxy.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
In both Countdown and Star Trek Online, what this really means is it will cause a bizarre chain reaction of destruction where the energy keeps getting fed and moving on to more and more star systems, But here it's just, oh, I guess a single supernova can blow up the entire galaxy or whatever. Spock promised the Romulans he'd save them, but he didn't arrive in time to stop it. He did eventually stop it, but Nero intercepted him and the two were sent back in time in the process. Nero beamed Spock here so that he could watch Vulcan's destruction. Somehow, even though they're not even in the same star system anymore. What I love is that the comic version of this uses images from the Countdown prequel without any of the more detailed explanation of any of this stuff. So now Nero is just some random dumbass Romulan who just happens to have a friggin' mining ship more powerful than both the Klingons and the Federation, and no personal beef with Spock beyond his "I promise to save Romulus" thing. The comic includes a brief dialogue to try to explain the sheer amount of coincidences present in the story. How Sulu, Chekhov, Uhura, Spock, McCoy, and Kirk all still ended up on the Enterprise despite the changed timeline. Dr. McCoy would assert our meeting here is not a matter of coincidence, but rather indicates a higher purpose. He'd call it a miracle. Precisely. Perhaps the time stream's way of attempting to mend itself. The same crew found its way onto the same ship in a time of ultimate crisis. Screw you, random engineer who died over Vulcan! You're not special enough for the timeline to try to save you! Yeah, this explanation is just silly. Even if the timeline was trying to right itself, and why would it, this is now a parallel universe, these people shouldn't be in the same class at the Academy, and both Kirk and Spock had careers for years before they were on the Enterprise together. The timeline isn't righting itself, it's trying to speed things along because it knows they're the main characters. After a bit of a bonding moment about Kirk's father, they head to a Starfleet outpost on Delta Vega, occupied by an alien named Keenzer, and Simon Pegg playing Montgomery Scott. Again, the timeline knows who the main characters are. How do you think I wound up here? I had a little debate with my instructor on the issue of relativistic physics and how it pertains to subspace travel. So, I tested it on Admiral Archer's prize beagle. I know that dog. What happened to it? I'll tell you when it reappears. There's something darkly amusing about the idea that Captain Archer's dog Porthos from Star Trek Enterprise survived to be over 100 years old just for Scotty to accidentally murder it in a transporter accident. They give Scotty an abridged explanation about being from the future and prove it by giving Scotty his own formula for transwarp beaming, which will allow them to transport themselves across many, many light years to a vessel traveling at warp. This is just nonsense. Technology way beyond what any show in the franchise was capable of doing. But what's even dumber is that old Spock refuses to go with them, even telling Kirk that he can't tell young Spock about him. He offers no real explanation why, and the end of the movie implies it's about them finding their own destiny, which is horse crap because their destiny right now is a crazy-ass Romulan with a doomsday weapon! To stop Nero, you alone must take command of your ship. If I've learned anything from many adventures with you, Jim, it's that you always somehow pull victory out of your ass, no matter how illogical it is. He says he can take command by invoking Starfleet Regulation 619, that any command officer who is emotionally compromised by the mission at hand must resign said command. Jim, I just lost my planet. I can tell you, I am emotionally compromised. What you must do is get me to show it. I recommend calling my mother a whore. Seemed to work when I was a kid. And so Kirk and Scotty beam aboard, and mercifully the comic cuts the Scotty beamed into a water tank bit to just one page before security finds them. On the bridge, Spock is naturally wondering how the hell they got back on board the ship, but Kirk just goads him into an emotional response, which involves him beating the crap out of Jim. But after a bit, he snaps out of it and realizes that he is indeed emotionally compromised, relinquishing command of the ship. Kirk, apparently still the acting first officer, assumes command. And enjoy this creepy rendering of Simon Pegg smiling. May it haunt your nightmares forever. Kirk announces their plan to go after Nero's ship, and we get a brief scene with Spock and Sarek for some character development, but we've still got a bit of a comic to go, so let's move on. Obviously, they can't just warp in front of the Narada and hope to win a fight, but they can hide behind Saturn's moon Titan, using the magnetic distortion from Saturn's rings to hide them from Nero's sensors. Spock will then beam over to Nero's ship, steal back the black hole device. What do you mean, steal it back? And try to rescue Captain Pike. Kirk says he's coming with him. I would cite regulation, but I know you will simply ignore it. See? We are getting to know each other. Now kiss! Issue 6 begins with Nero arriving at Earth orbit and activating the drill. As you may have gathered, the whole Starfleet defenses thing is completely moot, and we see no evidence of any battle, or whether they deactivated anything, so yeah, they just needed a way to get Pike off the bridge. Kirk and Spock beam over. Okie dokie then, if there's any common sense in the design of the enemy ship, I should be putting you somewhere in the cargo bay. Shouldn't be a soul in sight. And they end up right in the middle of like a dozen guys.
How else can I keep my reputation as a miracle worker?
After dealing with the Romulans, Spock mind melds with one to learn of where the Red Matter and Captain Pike are, arriving at Spock's ship. He of course soon realizes that Kirk didn't mention the whole future version of him thing, and it amounts to nothing. Thanks, old Spock. You really have a way with not being helpful.
Well, my work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I?
Spock takes the ship out while Kirk goes to get Pike, confronting Nero along the way, and getting his ass whooped. I know your face from Earth's history. James T. Kirk was considered to be a great man. He went on to captain the USS Enterprise. Then he captained a desk, then back on the Enterprise, then captained a Klingon bird of prey, then captained another Enterprise, then got sent into the future thanks to a temporal nexus, and got buried by a French guy under some rocks. But that was another life. A life I will deprive you of, just like I did your father! Okay, how the hell did he know about that? Did he make sure to study the family history of everybody you served alongside Spock? Spock's ship is able to destroy the drill, much to Nero's frustration. He goes to a warp, and of course Nero pursues, and then drops out of warp for no real reason. The Enterprise arrives to save him, though, while Kirk rescues Pike. The three are all beamed away while Spock's ship collides with the Narada, igniting the red matter and opening a massive black hole right in the middle of their ship. Of course, this is one of those slow-acting black holes, so it's taking a minute before it, destroys their ship. Kirk hails the Narada and offers assistance. Captain, what are you doing? Showing them compassion may be the only way to earn peace with Romulus. It's logic, Spock. It really isn't. Nero doesn't represent the Empire. He's from the future. Saving a few Romulans won't make peace, and no one on Romulus knows anything about this as far as we can tell. It doesn't matter anyway, since Nero refuses help and Kirk blows up their ship, with the comic panel showing Eric Bana taking a nap because he's bored with his bizarre acting. After some questionable science, the Enterprise gets away from the black hole, day is saved, and back at Starfleet Academy, old Spock meets with new Spock. Why did you send Kirk aboard when you alone could have explained the truth? Because you needed each other. I could not deprive you of the revelation of all that you could accomplish together, of a friendship that will define you both in ways you cannot yet realize. And this was more important than the insight you could have provided in stopping Nero and saving billions of people. The needs of the bromance, my young self. How did you persuade him to keep your secret? I inferred that universe-ending paradoxes would ensue should he break his promise. When? Young Spock wants to resign from Starfleet and help his people, but old Spock says he's got this covered. Spock, in this case, do yourself a favor. Put aside logic. Do what feels right. Since my customary farewell would appear oddly self-serving, I will simply say, good luck. It is advice I will share with our third actor. Wait, what third actor? You'll see. Kirk is given a commendation for saving the day, and I guess this means he can graduate early and become captain, because that makes sense. I mean, not even like the first officer or straight to lieutenant. We have to give him command of the flagship. But whatever, the crew is assembled, and I guess everyone else graduates now too. And so our comic ends with Leonard Nimoy reciting the Star Trek opening speech. To boldly go where no one has gone before. And Into Darkness proceeds to boldly go where they already went with their new version of Wrath of Khan. This comic is arguably the best of all the Star Trek movie adaptations. No, seriously, while I have many critiques of the movie, and subsequently the comic, as an adaptation, this is pretty damn good. It's certainly the longest adaptation we've done, which means most of the movie gets in there, plus a few extra bits that didn't make it into the theatrical cut. The artwork is very good and matches the likenesses of the actors, and there aren't friggin' lens flares everywhere trying to blind us. As for the movie itself, well, I've critiqued it enough. For what it is, it's okay, but man oh man, this was not what I wanted out of the franchise. I still think Star Trek Beyond was pretty damn good, and definitely the best of the Kelvin Timeline movies, so if you're gonna check out any of them, I recommend that one. It actually tells its own original story, and all the crew gets some moments to shine. I will say, from a story perspective, it is interesting that they approached the material like this. Not just a reboot, but the presence of Leonard Nimoy shows that it is sequel, prequel, and reboot. His final words to young Spock demonstrating the evolution of his character while starting an entirely new and fresh version of the original take of him. It's a unique situation that I've only ever seen once before, in the webcomic Schlock Mercenary, though that was only a few months of character development involving time travel changing how things played out, versus most of Spock's entire life. This movie may not be perfect, nowhere near perfect, but I applaud it for the method they went about it. Next time, Star Trektember continues with its only venture outside of the original series, as we take another look at DC's goofy first Next Generation miniseries.
Are you from the future?
Yeah, he is. I'm not.
Well, that's brilliant. Do they still have sandwiches there?
So yeah, with a giant robot, 2 fighters, and 3 people doing karate, the army of robots is thoroughly defeated. However, the Machine Empire isn't done yet.
No. I get that. Just... No, maybe this is a mistake. Yes, sir. No, I understand, sir. Yes, I'll be in touch. Linkara?
Who are you?
Oh, you must be the other one. Linkara told me about you. I'm Aaron.
You seem familiar to me.
You've probably seen my show. I'm the mythology expert. Anyway, I'm just here to borrow some stuff from Linkara.
Oh.
So, how you doing?
Nothing feels right.
Well, maybe if you weren't still wearing the tattered clothes?
That's not what I mean, but I don't want to change out of them anyway. They're mine, not his.
Gotcha.
They think I'm his clone.
I don't suppose they have any leads on that yet, right?
No.
Do you have a name yet? I mean, it'll be confusing if we call you both Linkara.
Harvey thinks I should be called Linclona.
I mean, that's pretty straightforward, I guess.
I don't know who I am. Every name they try to give me feels wrong. Even Linkara doesn't feel right. I suppose it's because I'm not him.
Be your own person. You don't have to be him if you don't want to.
But if I'm not him, then I need to know who I actually am. And if I am a clone, then who created me? And why?